The majority of adolescents at some point in their adolescence or early adult years have had at least fleeting, transient thoughts of their own death, suicidality. So it's extremely common. At least one half of everyone who's battling clinical depression has suicidal ideation. They're thinking about death as a possible escape. I think so many people out there have this weird skittishness, and it may be understandable caution around, like, if I ask somebody directly, are you having thoughts of death? Are you having thoughts about hurting yourself? That, like, A, I'm going to insult them. I'm going to offend them. There's so much stigma. They're going to think I'm judging them. Or even worse, somehow I'm going to be planting that idea. Oh my God, what if they're hurting and I ask about suicide and that's the thing that gets them thinking about it, and now it's on, it's
if I
like
do some sort of weird psychological inception on them.
Absolutely. But that is a genuinely common fear that I encounter. So I think the very first thing we have to do is destigmatize talking about suicidality and to normalize. If you have a friend who is depressed, if you have a friend who is really hurting and they're in pain, even if it's the pain of bereavement, where they've suffered a devastating loss of a loved one or a loved pet, what I say to people, and I encourage students and lay people, is just like, look, I know that many people, when they're hurting the way you are right now, they find themselves starting to think about death. And sometimes they even start to think about death as a kind of escape. And that's really understandable. And because I care about you and I know you're hurting, I hope you won't mind if I'm just going to be blunt. Like, I'm just going to ask, like, is that something that you've been dealing with? Have you been having those kind of thoughts? And just like very matter of fact, sensitive, thoughtful, empathetic, compassionate, but direct. I'm grateful for any reason that a person has when they're having suicidal thoughts, ideation, anything that will keep them from translating the ideation into intent. Like, I would never do it, and here's why. Because I could never abandon my cat. I'm like, thank God for Kitty, you know?
Yeah.
I like,
we'll take whatever's going at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. By any means necessary to keep a person engaged with a sense of hanging on and hopefulness, because we're going to get them through this crisis. And then when they get to the other side of it, they're going to look back and they're going to shake their head and say, thank God I did not end my life. Thank God I held on. When they heal and get well, they look back and they're so grateful, A, that somebody cared enough to intervene to keep them from acting. But then they're also just kind of creeped out by like a hair's breadth away from ending it all. And I would have missed out on all this beauty and all this love and all this joy.